Good morning, welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, Supermac and Gibbo on this fine Thursday morning. Morning, chaps.
Morning,
Good morning,
guys.
Steve. Hiya, John.
Hi,
Good
mate.
to see you both. Good to see you. And as always, an hour to chew the fat about everything black and white. And we have a question in straight away from BT. So you might as well go and sit down, John. Is St Maximin likely to push for a transfer away this summer, or would the club be willing to let ASM go, Malcolm?
I'm going to go and have me lunch, mate. Give us a bell tomorrow.
Because yes, Malcolm, I was filling Malcolm in prior to the show, just letting him know because he's not he isn't on Instagram, so Mrs. ASM's musings, shall we say? But he did put a big post out, Malcolm. This is following up from being on the treadmill in a black and white shirt after the season had finished. More or less saying, "Look, I'm back in training, guys." This one, it could have been taken in lots of different ways, Malcolm. It could have been a long goodbye. I'm off. Thanks for everything. It could be read that he's going to stay and fight for his place. I am undecided. My initial thoughts were this is my farewell to Newcastle. I've done my best. Thanks to all those who supported us. For those who criticised, I did say that. I've had a tough year on and off the pitch. I've lost a couple. He said he'd lost people close to him, which of course is not nice. It happens to us all, and our thoughts are with him on whoever that was. But also cites the fact that he's had injuries, and he's done his best, and also points to the fact that he came to Newcastle United when Newcastle United were far from United under the previous owner, and that he gave his best. So Malcolm, it is for me. I think the final curtain. I do feel he could leave this summer, and again comes down to the simple stuff that you always say, Malcolm. How many goals does he score? How many assists does he give? And there was a wonderful comparison on Twitter this week. Not sure if you will have seen it. No. Harvey Barnes in a relegated Leicester team, getting double figures in both assists and goals. ASM sadly not. So I think that really, if you wanted a bit of evidence in court, Malcolm, that would probably be it.
Yes, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There were sort of contradictory things that I've seen this morning. One is what ASM is saying, and it's almost like a goodbye letter, and the Newcastle manager, on the other hand, Eddie Howe, he's been saying how he's looking forward to having ASM for next season and wanting him to do what he did in the last game, as opposed to other games. He thought he played ever so well in the last game, and so yeah, it's all a bit contradictory. I just get the feeling that Alan St Maximin, I think he's sort of seeing a bit of invisible writing on the wall, and he gets the feeling that everything's moving beyond him. He's hugely skilled, but is he prepared to use all of that skill as to how the club wants him to use it, or does he just continue to keep going on his merry way, doing it only his way and not anybody else's? And you could look at him and think, well, yeah, he's very much a free spirit. You can't tie him down in any way. And plus the fact, I've heard from a number of different directions that there's a lot of interest in him coming from Italy, AC Milan in particular. Not a bad move, I suppose.
Yeah, I would agree. John, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And it's certainly caused a lot of debate this week. And I mean, ASM has caused a lot of debate, not just on this show, but every show we do on NUFC Matters. What's your thoughts on what you've read this week?
Well, I mean, you're reading between the lines because in a way, I think Maxi plays a lot of games that he enjoys. Like, he dangles little things out there and gets everybody talking about them. Is this the long goodbye, or is this, watch out, I'll be back next season? If I had a bet on it, I would think that the way it was written was a long goodbye, and everything you hear behind the scenes indicates that could be so. Two things struck me straight away. Dan Ashworth, when he came to Newcastle and was asked about the policy in the transfer market, said something very interesting that I thought fans would find perhaps a little bit confusing. And he said, look, all the great clubs that are successful actually are wheeler dealers. They don't just buy the best, but they sell a top name, maybe at a profit, to open up a position in the pecking order, in the financial fair play, etc., etc. And you look at Mane leaving Liverpool, you look at the lads that have left Man City, the fullback, etc., etc. There's quite a few players left Man City, and the club's rumbled on as the best in the country and the best in Europe. And he was sort of saying, you've got to do that, and fans have got to be prepared for that. Now, if you were going to sacrifice any top name at Newcastle for decent dosh without weakening the side and perhaps using the money to strengthen the side, then that guy would be Saint-Maximin, without a shadow of doubt, because there's genuine interest in him, as there always is with somebody with his ability. Forget the fact that there's no end product. The ability seduces people, some people, to having a dip from him. And so there's always going to be interest in him. But at the same time, it's got to be remembered that this man, however good he is or he isn't, Eddie Howe has not started him regularly for an age. In the old days, before Eddie Howe and the owners arrived, people like Lascelles and Ritchie and Shelby and Saint-Maximin and Dubrovka were regular blue chip starters, first name on this team sheet. None of those are mentioned or first name on the team sheet anymore. Saint-Maximin isn't, Lascelles isn't, Dubrovka isn't, Ritchie isn't. The time has passed. Shelby gone. The time has passed them by. And we all know how the transfer market works, and we all know how Eddie works. How Eddie works is that everybody's wonderful and he never wants anybody to go. You said it before. Shelby went to Sheffield, to Nottingham Forest. He said it before. Wood went to Nottingham Forest. He's saying it now about this guy. He always says it. He always, because he is a good guy who builds up team spirit by never putting a dent in anybody's reputation publicly. So, yes, he wants to work with everybody next season, but then all of a sudden players disappear and you think, whoops, what happened there? We also know that all this business, you're not supposed to tap players and do this. Yes, but since football was created as a sport in this country, tapping's gone on for players. It's natural. It's what happens. It's life. And I know that Saint-Maximin's people have been in touch with several clubs, as Malcolm says, in Italy, and Spurs, forgetting who the manager is, because the manager doesn't do the transfer deals at Tottenham, as we all know. They have shown a definite interest. So they have people made approaches to Saint-Maximin. Now, if you're not anymore the number one guy, which he was under the old regime, and you've squeezed out a little bit, you may have your head turned by these other clubs saying what a wonderful player you are and we would love to sign you. So it works both ways. I wouldn't be surprised if Maxi went this summer for all those reasons I've just talked about. And yes, we will be grateful for what he did in the old regime, because in the old regime, he was the only attacking force we virtually had, because poor old Callum Wilson was standing up on his own, and since we've become a front foot club, he scored 18 goals in the Premier League this season, which is his record. And when we were a back foot club, which we were under the way we played under Steve Bruce, it was very different. The go-to man in those days was Maxi, so thank you for that, because it helped us to not get relegated. But I think time passes some people by, and it might be just that stage with Maxi. Keeping Maxi for the bench as an impact sub, if he was in the right frame of mind and was ready to get off the bench and burst the gut and run through brick walls, would be an advantage. If he's not in that mood because he feels he ought to be starting, then he's better off being allowed to go with a big thank you and hopefully trouser a right few quid, which helps the fair play situation.
And he does give the impression, John, I think, that he's quite moody.
Yes. Oh, I think that's absolutely true.
So, so if it's not going his way, then he goes into a bad frame of mind.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very, very interesting in the summer. But, you know, everybody that leaves this summer, good old Eddie, he'll want them to stay until the day suddenly they're disappearing over the Tyne Bridge. Because that's the way life is at St. James's these days.
Yeah, definitely is. The one thing with ASM, if he was so good, why only Spurs and AC Milan after him, says Chippers. I think ASM would be very good in Italy, mint in Italy, says Ian. Okay, question from Ian. He says, with Bellingham going to Real Madrid for 85 million plus bonuses, does Supermac and Gibbo think there is no way that Rice should be valued at 100 million? It's an interesting one, this, Malcolm. Valuation of players, isn't it? Because, you know, ultimately, you know, who it's like anything. If you've got something in the house that you want to sell, it's only worth what someone's going to pay for it, Malcolm.
Yeah. I'm not sure about the 85 million. I saw a figure much higher than that. Do you know anything on that, John?
Yeah, I mean, they're saying plus bonuses. I mean, every transfer, you have the basic fee you played and then the add-ons after he's played X number of games. If you win the title, if you win the cup, if you pay extra money. So it depends whether you're looking at
not to him, but to his old club.
Correct.
Yeah.
So how much is a player costing you? And no doubt it might be 85 million put down to start with, but it'll be if Real Madrid win La Liga, if Real Madrid win the European Cup, if Real Madrid win the Copa del Rey over there, etc. So, I mean, the figures, as you've said, Malcolm, we've seen figures that have said 100 million. I've seen figures that said 125 for Bellingham.
Yes.
That would be, right. You know, if they win everything that they could win. I mean, the difference is probably Bellingham is a bit more of an all-round midfielder than Rice is. Rice is basically a defensive midfielder who has added breaking forward to his goal and scoring goals to his repertoire of recent times. Roy Keane, who can be the harshest of critics, always said he was or was it Graham Souness? It might have been Graham Souness, that he wasn't in the world-class midfield situation. And that may have been so, but he's pretty warm. And he's still only about 25. So, I mean, he's got age. Bellingham's even younger, crikey me. Wonderful talent. But yes, I mean, the Rice figure would seem high, but I mean, I thought Steve made an ideal point. You know, how much is somebody worth? How much is my house worth? It's worth however much somebody will pay for it. You know, and if you're lucky that
but there's no harm that you, prior to selling, that you stick a figure on which is way over the value of it, because then you've got to have the room to negotiate.
Just absolutely, yeah. And you're hoping that two people don't want to play.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then you get a bidding war and you're going to get more dough. And I mean, the only consolation to West Ham, Rice having picked up a European trophy last night, the first they've had since Bobby Moore. So that's how long they've waited. We've waited a long time, so have they. But, you know, Rice having done that, it's a perfect way to go out for Rice, but it is a big loss for...
Did you get the feeling? Did you watch it last night?
No, I didn't, no.
All right. I got the feeling that his reaction afterwards, it was a bit more than having won a trophy, that it was a great way to go out in style.
Oh, without a shadow of doubt, that's what I'm saying.
Him, I had the distinct impression that he knew he would be on his bike.
Oh, there's absolutely no question. I mean, it's virtually done deals, and it's accepted by West Ham, it's accepted by Rice, and it's just a matter of which club is winning the war for the card, for how much it is. I mean, that was his final goodbye, and you can tell, because he's got great feeling for West Ham. He's been there since being a little boy. I mean, if you're looking at your career, you can't stay and play for West Ham for the rest of your career if you want to win trophies and you've got the ability of Rice, because they aren't going to win the trophies. It's the old bit about Harry Kane, isn't it? You know, do you move and win trophies, or do you stay and win now? So if you're going to go out at West Ham, and he wants to be loved by the West Ham fans because it's his club from being a Ben, last night guaranteed that he was loved anyway, but that he'll be loved for an eternity as their winning skipper, and he can leave with his head held high and not get booed when he goes back, because that's a tricky thing. When you leave a club, they never forgive you, the fans do. And the fans that adore you hate you because you dare leave, because they never leave. You know, if you're a West Ham fan, it's for life. If you're a Newcastle fan, it's for life. But players do leave. And Rice will go. He's definitely gone. That was his last game. And good luck to him. What a way to go out.
Yeah, amazing way to go out. And it'd be interesting to see where he ends up. And West Ham indeed have announced that he will be leaving. And Liverpool announced that McAllister has joined from Brighton today. So a little bit of early business being done at Anfield. Do you think he would come to Newcastle, says Eric? It's an interesting one. I don't think so. I think it's more likely to be Bayern Munich, potentially Manchester United, I know, are certainly in the frame as well. Arsenal, your old club Arsenal are looking for him.
Yes, yeah, but Newcastle aren't going to pay those kind of inflated fees because at the moment the restrictions on Newcastle mean that they have to be very, very canny in the way that they go about their selection and negotiation on transfer values. And Newcastle, they're looking more at players half the price of.
I was about to say, Malcolm, if they paid 100 million, they could probably sign one more player maximum.
That would be it. Summer. Yeah, Newcastle, because they're in the Champions League, they need to fortify their squad, and anything up to 6, maybe 7 players to cover the Champions League. You know, it's instead of playing 1 game a week, they're now playing 2 games a week. So that's doubled up the amount of playing, which doubles up the amount of injury, doubles the amount of tiredness, and so on and so forth as the season goes on.
And the other thing, Malcolm, and you're quite right about the fee, they wouldn't pay £100 million for a single player, not at this stage of their development. Eventually, yes, but not at this stage. They would also not smash their wage structure to pay the money Rice would demand.
Sure.
But, you know, in that other clubs like Arsenal and Bayern Munich, who are and Man United, who are well established in the fair play, etc., can afford to pay and will pay. So they wouldn't match West Ham and they wouldn't match Rice. So they rate them. There's absolutely no question about that. And they want 2 midfielders. A defensive one and an attacking one, but no, I don't think Rice will be on his way to Newcastle.
Yeah, and apart from anything, John, I'm not convinced by him. I'm sure that some are, but personally, I'm not. And I find him getting dragged out of position all too often. And I saw him fairly early in the game last night, and he got to the edge of the penalty area, and I was quite shocked. What's he doing there? I haven't seen him there for a very long time. the fact he had got forward on that one occasion. Didn't do it again in the game, though. You know, and for a midfield player of his kind of game, he needs to be getting on the edge of the box an awful lot more than he actually does.
Morning to Nick. He says, what's your thoughts on the Europa Conference League, lads? He says, you've got to be jealous of West Ham supporters. We need to win a trophy, any trophy. I'm pleased we're in the Champions League, Mal. We had this discussion a while back about, which trophy you'd like to be involved in. And if you're going to be involved in Europe, you want to be involved in the best. It's more lucrative. There's better opposition. It's the same old story, though. Europa, UEFA, Champions League, you have to adapt to a new way of life because you have to travel. You've got to travel. You're playing 3 games a week on a constant basis. So it doesn't matter which European competition you're in, but ultimately, I get where Nick's coming from. Maybe he feels that it's easier to win the Europa Conference League than the Champions League for Newcastle.
I follow that totally what Nick's saying, and I wrote an article about that in the Chronicle about 10 days ago. When I said, no, I'm delighted to be in the Champions League, because some Newcastle fans were suggesting perhaps we've developed too quickly. We've gone from bottom to 4th and into Champions League, and if we finish 6th or 7th, it might have been easier. Now, if it was just about winning a cup, any cup outside of an egg cup, then go in the Conference League, because, boy, that's very, very average. I mean, the Conference League, not the Europa League, the Conference League. I mean, if you look at that, West Ham have just won the Conference League. Now, they've struggled all season not to be relegated. Last year in the Conference League, Leicester City made the semi-finals of the Conference League, and they've got relegated this season. So, I mean, it's easier. In fact, it's a darn sight easier, because a lot of countries are thin. A lot of countries, once you take the top teams out, Scotland, of course, with Rangers, Celtic, even La Liga, once you take out perhaps Real Madrid and Barcelona, maybe it's Atletico Madrid, they're suddenly thin, and so is other countries. So the quality of sides that go into the Conference League might be decent over here, but that's why we do so well. I mean, I tell you what, I'll sit here now and I'll forecast Aston Villa will win the Conference League next year. They could stroll it. They could stroll it, because but they wouldn't necessarily in the Europa League, and certainly not in the Champions League. If Newcastle were in the Conference League next season, they would win it. But I would rather, and therefore they'd have their first trophy in half a century or whatever. But I would rather be in the Champions League with all the excitement, all the money, all the drama, all the glamour, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Paris Saint-Germain. And if we want to win the trophy, let's win the FA Cup or League Cup. 6 games, end up at Wembley, lovely day out in the sun, and win. Let's win that cup. I mean, if you do want to win a trophy, be in the Conference League. But I find it, I mean, I'm so pleased in a way for West Ham or any English side that does well in Europe, but I almost find the Conference League embarrassing. And the fact that it's called the conference doesn't help me, because I spent 11 years with Gateshead and we played the conference. So, I don't see it as a height of my ambition for NUFC, but I follow that we could win it. We would win that trophy next season with our squad, but I'd rather be in the Champions League a million times, and let's try to win either the League Cup or the FA Cup.
Yeah, I think the only thing I was a bit, disappointed about was, seeing the Fiorentina fans attacking the West Ham fans before the game, and I think it was the message I put across on NUFC Matters last night, Malcolm, with a few of the supporters, was just got to be careful when you're abroad, because it's always likely that there's going to be somebody out there who's going to want to have a pop at you. It's not like going to the game at St James's Park and you're in the confines of your own stadium, and it could have spoiled things, and of course. We saw a few idiots chucking things at players, and it halted the game at one stage last night, Malcolm.
Yeah, I fear for West Ham because I'm sure that there's going to be official retribution for that incident. But what happened outside of the stadium was unfortunate. Albeit, I was saying last night, why on earth do they do they take a final to a place like Prague, where and play it in a stadium that's half the size of Middlesbrough's ground? For heaven's sake, it had a capacity of 20,000. I just find that utterly bizarre. All West Ham got were 5,000 tickets, and yet I would imagine that far more than that actually travelled over there. Well, and those without tickets, they travel over and they're furious, they're angry, and the same applied, of course, to Fiorentina. And I just find it madness. Why don't they play the finals in 100,000 seater, or 80 to 100,000?
It's this business, Malcolm. You're absolutely right, because it's ridiculous. But it's this business. They want to fly the flags in countries where that country doesn't win a World Cup or a European Championship, so they go to Prague, whose teams aren't going to win. They go to Qatar for the World Cup finals because they're never going to win the World Cup. So they want to take these showpiece events to countries where they haven't got the facilities or the expertise or whatever to handle it. Just to sort of say, we aren't going to spend all our time playing in Germany and Spain and England and whatever. But, it is a nonsense. Can you imagine Newcastle getting to some sort of European final and having to go to Prague with 5,000 tickets? I mean, incredible. And I think there's about 15,000 West Ham fans that were in fan zones in Prague last night, just to be near where the game was taking place.
Yeah, and it's just waiting for something just to kick off, a word, an action, or something, and once it starts, then it just keeps multiplying. And I think the football authorities ask for trouble at times. I really do.
Yeah. And you can often tell explosive games the potential of them. And, an English side playing Italian sides always got that potential for the hooligan element of that club to kick off. I mean, absolutely. What Fiorentina did with their ultras before the game on some West Ham fans was absolutely shocking. And then we go inside and some West Ham fans split the head of a Fiorentina player by throwing something on. I mean,
it stokes up the Fiorentina fans.
Yeah, it's bad, isn't it? And I mean, once upon a time, if you go back to the 50s or something, we in the Heysel and whatever, we were the big thugs of Europe. And I remember going over with England to play the Republic of Ireland in Dublin when Jack Charlton was the manager, and the game on and Ned Kelly from Newcastle put the Republic of Ireland ahead after a quarter of an hour, and the game was abandoned because all the English fans, the National Front fans from London, just ripped the stadium apart and threw stuff on the pitch, and the game had to be abandoned. And I'm having to report on it, and I'm English reporting for an English paper, and it's the English fans that have finished the match with a Geordie manager, Charlton, and a Newcastle centre forward scoring the goal. Not pretty, not good. But luckily those days as bad as that.
Sure, but am I right in, if memory serves me, John, that back in the 70s, that all English clubs were barred from European competition?
Oh, they were.
Was it 5 years?
Yeah, it was after Heysel, wasn't it? The state, when Liverpool was at Liverpool,
yes.
And we, I mean, I forget who it was, but one club made Europe completely out of the blue, qualified for Europe, completely out of the blue, and couldn't take part because we were banned. And I don't think that club qualified for Europe again, sort of thing. They lost the golden moment because we were banned, and that was the end of this spell when we had Liverpool winning the European Cup every year. It's well, it seemed like every year, quite a few times. And yes, things changed for a while, and we were the bad boys in those days. I'm not suggesting that we've got halos now, but we were really leading at that time. But it was bad in this country at that time, wasn't it? You remember, Steve, when the guys used to come up from London, the National Front, etc., and stand outside St James's, and we used to have all sorts of trouble, and we all had all sorts of trouble with black players, didn't we, at St James, until Andrew Cole helped that enormously by coming here and scoring 40-odd goals, and all of a sudden the colour of skin didn't seem to matter to these particular people anymore, as it ought not to. But there we go. Anyway, enough of that. We're not going to scare the old horses with Newcastle in Europe next season. We're not going to scare the horses and have them bolt. We shall be there in great force, carrying the flag with honour across the continent next year.
Halfway through the show, time for the adverts. A big thanks to all our sponsors: Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces, which are handmade in Cumbria. Their website is mrvickies.co.uk. If you want to contact the guys, email info@mrvickies.co.uk or telephone 01768 210 102. Big thanks to New Workwear. They are an agile and dedicated workwear provider launched in 2018. For more information, go to their website, newworkwear.com. Big thanks, as always, to Media Arts for the help with the video side of things. If you want to support the channel, hit the subscribe button, become a subscriber today. Hit the thumb up under the video, which likes the video, and click share to share to your other social media. Click join if you want to become a member of the channel for as little as $1.99. Or take a one-off payment for the cult membership. You can get in via this QR code if you've got a smartphone, or look for membership pack on the website, nufcmatters.com. What do you get for your one-off £25 payment? You get a scarf, a pen, and a cup, and a membership card, and entry into the monthly draw. Don't forget, if you want a car sticker, all you need to do is subscribe to the show and then email John at NUFC Matters, and he will post you a free car sticker out. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. And we also support the food bank on this channel. NUFCfansfoodbank.co.uk is the virtual matchday bucket where you can make a virtual donation 365 days of the year. The new Alan Shearer raffle is underway. 150 tickets at £1 a ticket. You could win a limited edition signed Alan Shearer ball from the 260 dinner. Enter now at nufcmatters.com. We've got a few events coming up. August the 5th sees Gavin Peacock at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets are £10, and you can get them now from nufcmatters.com. Our Christmas event takes place on the 7th of December at the Tyneside Irish Centre, and that's an evening with Frank Clark. Tickets are £15 and available from nufcmatters.com. Finally, Waddle, Keegan, Beardsley and friends. The class of 84 is on at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House on Westgate Road in Newcastle on Thursday, January the 23rd. Tickets are now available from the Tyne Theatre and Opera House.co.uk or telephone 0844 2491 000. That's the box office telephone number 0844 2491 000. Okay, we often talk about financial fair play on this show because it relates to transfers. Lots of sponsorship activity at this moment in time. Malcolm, Newcastle confirming a new relationship with Fun88 as Asian betting partners, and now confirming that they are going to continue their relationship with Noon. And we're led to believe potentially that the new strip will be unveiled sometime this weekend, potentially Friday, with the two Sam Fender gigs taking place at the club. And with that, we would expect to see the new sponsor. So along with Newcastle qualifying for the Champions League and finishing in 4th place and having a really good cup run last year and getting to a final, as well as potentially bringing money in with transfers as well. Newcastle's financial fair play is certainly going to look a lot better. The finances are going to look a lot better this season than they have for many a year.
They certainly are. And I think that in 12 months' time, it will take a major boost because most of the deals that Mike Ashley organised, they're all going to be running out. And so they've got a new shirt sponsor, Newcastle, a Saudi Arabia company, I believe. And that's great. That's a start. And I think that over the next 12 months, we're going to see an awful lot of scope open up for Newcastle, particularly financially. The fair play financial situation, it's making it very difficult, I think, for everybody at Newcastle in terms of transfer fees and what have you. But I think in the next 15 months that we're going to make it a lot easier and with a lot more ability to compete with the clubs around us.
Yeah, big news, isn't it, John? And I mean, the sponsorship is going to be the biggest in the club's history.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this was the reason why, in tandem with Newcastle United's new owners providing forceful upfront leadership in Eddie Howe, in Mad Dog, and all the players that were brought in the various windows to improve us dramatically on the field. Behind the scenes, with Eales and Dan Ashworth and everybody else that's been appointed, there's as much going on behind the scenes, because if we are to keep the boat afloat and indeed improve it, which is the end product of any football club, its results on the pitch, then you've got to have the clout of the financial, these days in particular, a lot different to what it was like in the 60s, etc. You've got to have the financial clout of really wringing the sponge dry. And I mean, you know, that's the last thing Newcastle United had. You were saying, Steve, the position's going to be a lot healthier. It could never be worse than it was under Ashley, because he totally ignored that side of the game. He wasn't interested in it. That side didn't matter. Just making money by staying in the Premier League, that was the ultimate for him, and the rest of it didn't matter. So we weren't starting off like any other club. If you take over Liverpool or Manchester United or Spurs or one of the, you know, you're starting off halfway up the mountain or 3/4 of the way up the mountain. We were starting off at the foot of the mountain because there was nothing in place. So, and you can't go from there to the top of the mountain in one leap. I'm not talking about league position of the team. I'm talking about financial. So yes, these are the first steps, inevitable steps, because these are ambitious businessmen, and they're not going to run the club pure, you know, badly or purely with the heart. They do care, etc., but they're good businessmen. They'll make the business work. And that is what's happening at the moment. And we have so much to catch up on. We are trying to compete at the moment. If you look at the league table, we're the 4th best club in England. That's in terms of results on the football field, because we're 4th. We're nowhere near that financially, being in the top 4. We're probably in the bottom 6 financially, but that's going to change, and it's starting to change now.
And that's due to these FFP rules. And what I would say is that the people who own Newcastle now and are working behind the scenes, they are doing their utmost for the benefit of Newcastle United, whereas previously that it was all being done for the benefit of Sports Direct, and the club suffered dreadfully for that. Where Sports Direct, it developed from a national company to a global company. and that was all on the back of Newcastle United and its finances, of course. And so now everybody at Newcastle can know 100% that every bit of effort that they put in is for the good of Newcastle United, not some other third body.
Yeah, very true. Okay, I have got a request, lads, from a good friend of mine, Neil Jackson, who is from Media Arts, who does a lot of the video side of things. He would like you to wish his friend Sid a very happy birthday.
Well, we very much so, Sid. We're thinking of you, and we obviously know you're one of us. You're a toonie, otherwise you wouldn't be involved in this program or listening to it, etc. And I think we all think it's our birthday every day now, whereas before all I used to do was go to funerals all the time. For 15 years, I just went to Newcastle United's funeral. It's now my birthday every day. I'm beginning to, in the past, I only loved the summers because we never lost games in the summer. But the minute the football season started, we lost. Now I'm actually bored with the summer. I want the football to come back so I can get me highs. And so happy birthday, Sid. We're all enjoying it at the moment. I hope you have an extra special day, if it's today or if it's this weekend. Make the best of it, mate, and look forward with optimism to what's to come.
Yeah, I certainly join John in all of those thoughts. And yes, Sid, very happy birthday to you. I hope you thoroughly enjoy it, and I think that we've got a season to look forward to in a way that we haven't been able to look forward to a season in a very, very long time. And so it doesn't matter about getting old these days. What Newcastle United are doing makes us all feel very young.
Yeah, 80 is a good age as well. So he's done well to reach that. Happy birthday, Sid. Have a great day, mate, and just enjoy what's coming at Newcastle United. You'll have seen a lot more than I have, certainly. But have a great day, and you enjoy your birthday. Alan Thompson says, who do you want, John, in the Champions League final? Real Madrid or Bayern Munich? Or do you want the easy tie? Barcelona or Borussia Dortmund?
Isn't it lovely to be talking like that? I mean, that is the first thing I say. It's lovely to be talking like that. And you know what else is lovely? And this is before we sign reinforcements in the summer that we know are certain to come. If we had any of those coming to St. James's Park in the group stage of the Champions League, they wouldn't find that they were playing a side that would roll over and they could tickle their tummy. We would give even the quality European sides a heck of a game at St. James's Park. There's absolutely no question about that. We only lost 2 all last season in the league at St. James's. And if you had the League Cup games at St. James's, it was still only 2 that was lost. So we're competing again, and we can hold our head up. And that's what I keep saying to somebody. I'm wanting that big draw. We're inevitably going to get it because in the group stage, we are going to be in the last pot. So we're going to get somebody from pot 1, which is one of the big clubs. But I mean, I have sat in a load of dross over about 50 years, but seen Newcastle beat Barcelona at St. James's Park, beat Juventus at St. James's Park, and beat Inter Milan at St. James's Park. And I'm looking to add to my little list. I'm still on one hand, by the way. I haven't gone to 2 hands. That's only 3 clubs. But I'm wanting to see us beat another top club. And I would rather it not be one of those 3. If we get them, we'll beat them again. But I'd rather it be a new one. Let's beat Real Madrid or Bayern Munich or even Paris Saint-Germain. I'm saying even because they're never been European champions, but ought to have been with the money they've had. Have they misspent? Instead of being shrewd. Manchester City have done it perhaps the perfect way when you look. If they become champions of Europe on Saturday night, as I expect them to, then they are an ideal club to say that is the way to the top. They've won the league title 5 out of 6. They've won League Cups. They've won FA Cups. They've won Europe. As Malcolm often says, they've got 2 teams, one as good as the other. I mean, I had a little smile before the FA Cup final, because some national papers, and I'm talking against my own because I'm a newspaper man myself, but looking for a story, the Nagel has Pep, taking a huge gamble on the cup final by not playing Edison and playing his cover goalkeeper. Well, he could play one of two. He could play 2 teams. And by the way, this other goalkeeper showed up the gear because he was quality with his feet on the floor. The goalkeeper, he played in the FA Cup final, and he played all the way through the FA Cup. So you're going to have a goalkeeper play all the way through and then throw him out on the final for somebody else? I don't think so. And by the way, he'd never let in a single goal. Manchester City hadn't let in a goal in the FA Cup till they went to Wembley. And that goal that was let in was a penalty. So an open play, they won the FA Cup without letting a goal in from open play. And it wasn't at all a gamble to play this goalkeeper because they've got 2 players. They put out teams some days, and De Bruyne's not playing, and Foden's not playing, and Ake is not playing. And it's amazing they can do that. I mean, Mahrez, who's been a big star in the past, hasn't started for ages. The winger, Mahrez, they've got this huge strength and depth. And I would like to see us play. I mean, we could play Celtic, but I wouldn't call. I would expect to beat them.
Mal, any particular team you would love to play at St James's Park in the Champions League in the coming season?
Not particularly. There's a number of teams I'd like to beat at St James Park, but I don't, and I think that's got to be the attitude. One thing that I would say is that that when it comes to cup competitions, and it's all about goals, scoring goals at one end, not letting them in at the other end. And you mentioned Manchester City's record in the FA Cup, which was quite incredible. But at Newcastle, the one thing they have built up great stats this last season, which ideally suits going into these type of competitions. And so I think we can look forward to it with quite a lot of confidence that we're not going to be out of depth at all, as long as we don't start to get a crippling run of injuries, because numbers are the one thing that can let us down.
Yeah, it is something we've been rather lucky with, of course, in the last 12 months. And that is a big issue: suspensions, injuries, and that comes with more games as well, of course, John.
Yeah, absolutely. That heightens that situation, and we all know the cost of players not being available, because the most standout one was Nick Pope not being available at Wembley for the League Cup final. Out of the blue, gets sent off, not available, and all of a sudden we go to Wembley with our 4th choice and 5th choice goalkeepers involved, because we didn't have Pope, we didn't have Dubravka because he'd played for Manchester United in the cup, we didn't have Darlow because he was at Hull City. So there's 3 goalkeepers that were out. So our 4th choice goalkeeper, Carriers, played, and my 5th choice, Gillespie, was on the bench. And this was for a showpiece final. You get that sort of look. You get that sort of situation, freakish though it was, you get that sort of situation before you play Real Madrid away, and the whole ball game's different. So yes, your injuries and suspensions are a huge part if you've got limited numbers. And really, one of the things that I've mentioned recently in the Chronicle that I'm intrigued about, yes, I'm intrigued as to who the left back's going to be, the right-sided centre-half, the 2 midfielders, the attacker that we buy. But we've still got to solve the goalkeeping situation beneath Pope, because Dubravka and Darlow both went out on loan last season, which indicates that we would be prepared to let them go if they were dissatisfied. And Karius and Gillespie are out of contract. So technically, all 4 goalkeepers beneath Pope, their future is uncertain for next season. I don't expect all 4 to go. I think Gillespie's certain to go. Karius, his pregnant girlfriend, wants him to leave Newcastle to be nearer to her home in Italy. He could stay as third choice, but he may, to please her, if he gets an option elsewhere, leave. And then it's a matter of what happens with Dubravka and Darlow wanting moves. I would like to see Dubravka stay as the cover goalkeeper. He did well at Chelsea. You need a number 2. And Karius as a number 3 would do. But none of those 4 are nailed on to be here next season. So that's something that has got to be addressed. I know that Eddie Howe said he's told Dubravka and Karius he wants them to stay. But Karius he can't make stay because he's on a freedom. He's on his contract's up. And Dubravka, he could force him to stay. He's got 2 years on his contract. But the indications are the good servant that he's been for many years, at this stage of his life, if he wanted first team football, he wouldn't force him against his feelings. I'm just hoping that perhaps, knowing you've got the Champions League, knowing you're going to be part of the first team squad and have a lot more chance of playing, because we have 4 competitions next season, that he would decide to stay. But yes, the point emphasised by Malcolm over injuries and suspensions also applies to the goalkeeping situation at the moment. That's very fluid. You know that Pope is the number 1, but Pope suddenly gets suspended for Wembley, and he suddenly he needs a hand surgery on his hand, which none of us knew about until he was out the last game of the season. So, things like that happen. If that had been mid-season with a hand injury, how long might he have been out? We don't want to run those sort of risks next season because it's a big... If we can play our first team every game next season, and he never can, we'll be as good as gold.
Yeah, the boss man Reigns. Just want to know what our thoughts are on McAllister going to Liverpool. And we touched on Declan Rice earlier. McAllister going to Liverpool. I mean, it was obvious he was going to go to Liverpool. He was linked with them at the back end of last season, and Brighton have to sell, don't they, to move forward, Malcolm, really?
Well, they seem to they seem to get rid of their best players and improve the side with whatever they bring in. It's amazing what they're doing. I really do think it is incredible what's happening there. But McAllister, I think he's a good signing for Liverpool. He'll suit Liverpool down to the ground.
It's a bit of a rebuilding job there, isn't it, John?
Oh, yes, hugely, and especially so in midfield. There's almost been a neglect of duty when you look at it, and they've done so well for so long under Klopp. They've won the Premier League, they've been runners up regularly in the Premier League, they've been in Euro finals. It's almost age has sneaked up on off the squad. You look at Firmino, you look at Milner, you look at all the midfielders, you look at Henderson getting almost age has come along and taken them all by surprise, which it shouldn't, the club, which it shouldn't do. And all of a sudden, they've got aged legs and they play with a high press and energy, which older players haven't got. So there's a huge rebuilding. McAllister was never going to stay at Brighton. The minute McAllister won the World Cup with Argentina, and he's at a club that hasn't got Daniel Levy as its chairman, so he doesn't say stubbornly, nobody can go anywhere. Brighton encourage you to go, they make a fortune, and then they find somebody just as good. And McAllister was always going to go to a big club. He was suddenly a World Cup winner in a side like Argentina. And he was, and I think they've almost stolen him because he had a little something in his contract that meant they've got him for about 34 million. Yeah, which these days, when you talk about Rice at 100 million, etc., is some deal, mate.
Yeah, Aston says they're 35 million. Excellent business.
Right. John, just you mentioned Firmino. I keep hearing tales of Newcastle making an approach for him because he's on a free, isn't he?
He is on a free.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a quality player. His touch is a touch of velvet, and he's so popular in the dressing room, etc., etc. Yes, I think there's genuine interest, but to be truthful, in an ideal world, Eddie, I think, wants a younger man that can play right across the front three. Not in the way Isaac can, but is almost done. You know, when he's played wide left and centre forward, he wants a winger that can play across the front three. And perhaps Firmino's at the wrong stage of his life. You get him free. You're not going to get him cheap on wages, but you're going to get, especially when he is free. But I mean, he's a beautiful, beautiful player, and this sort of game Newcastle play, he would be ideal for. But within a couple of years, it's a great thing, isn't it, Malcolm? Like you say, a lot of clubs, Manchester United, etc., we want Harry Kane, and we'll pay 100 million or 120 million. He's 29. In 2 years' time, he's Haaland's 24 or something, and he's got a whole career in front of him.
Yeah. McAllister went for 35 million. Sources suggest it could rise to 55 million, depending on appearances, etc., which is standard. At the end of the show, guys, just a quick happy birthday to somebody you know very well, David Craig.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, dear old Craigie. Yeah, real classy player. And I was actually reading a piece about him. I was so surprised to see that that when he was 16, he came to Newcastle because Scunthorpe United had turned him down.
What a lucky escape!
Yeah, no wonder they're getting nowhere.
That tells you it's like Beardsley, isn't it, with Gillingham and Oxford? Like, you know,
that's
Oxford
right.
telling him he's too small and he hasn't got talent, and then he plays for England and wins everything with Liverpool. But with Craigie, happy birthday, big man!
Yeah.
Lovely.
He was, John, a class player, wasn't he? Absolute class.
Lovely lad and a class.
And it was so sad about the hamstring kept letting him down.
Sure, but the way he played fullback in our days in the 70s, he could play today, because
without any shadow of a doubt,
they like players today. Your fullbacks have got to go forward. You've got to have a touch, etc., etc. Frankie Clark, who I adore and who was the best defensive player, as Malcolm says, he would find it hard to play today at left back, because it's all about being able to bomb forward like a winger.
Yes, it's not so much about defending these days.
No. Frank would find
getting forward is more important even.
Frank would find that his greatest strengths were less used these days, and the thing he wasn't good at, which was attacking, looking velvety, wasn't part of his makeup. Craigie would have suited today's game. Happy birthday, my friend.
Yes, indeed. Happy birthday, Dave. Enjoy.
Great stuff, lads. Look forward to seeing you next week. Have a good week, lads. Take care.
Indeed.
Take care, fellas.
Cheerio, everyone.
Bye-bye.